This is going to be a video going over the MAK-90 Sporter made by Norinco in China. You're probably familiar with Chinese AKs such as Polytech or B West. Those were a couple big importers of these rifles, and the Type 56 rifles that were before it. So MAK-90 stands for Modified AK 1990, which is the year that these started coming in to the US. The reason these rifles came about is because in 1989 there were further gun restrictions and import restrictions, and these rifles had to come in a modified state so that they could skirt around those restrictions. When these rifles came in, they came in with these thumbhole stocks. As you can kind of see there, a lot of the time you're still going to see these rifles with the thumbhole stocks on them that they were imported with. This one obviously has a pretty standard Type 56 style stock and pistol grip. Another thing that they modified about these rifles is that the gas block does not have a bayonet lug or the retaining bits for the cleaning rod, and the front sight block does not have the fangs on it for retaining the cleaning rod. And also the muzzle is not threaded. It looks like it is, but that is kind of just the profile of the barrel, as you can see there. So not threaded, no bayonet lugs, no cleaning rod retaining bits, and with a thumbhole stock. There's a couple different versions of the MAK-90 that came in. This one is a stamped receiver, which is going to be the most common one you see around. And then they have the milled receiver, which is a little bit less common and usually more expensive when you do find them. They also have the NHM 90s, which are basically the same rifle, but I believe they have a threaded barrel underneath a kind of shroud. And then there's MAK-91s as well as NHM 91s, which just have a longer barrel. Those are kind of a RPK style rifle. One of the most important things you have to look out for when you're buying a MAK-90 is whether or not the rear of the receiver is a straight cut or a slant cut. After 1994 and the assault weapons ban took place, these rifles started getting imported with a cut in the receiver. It went all the way around, so it was just a hole in the receiver. The thumbhole stocks that came with them covered up that section. So if you're going to buy a rifle, just make sure that it's either a straight or a slant cut, because obviously you're going to want to replace this thumbhole stock. And if it's a slant cut, you're going to have to fit whatever stock you put on there to it. It can still easily accept a standard pistol grip with a new pistol grip screw and nut, but the stock has to be fitted. If not, you're going to be able to see the inside of the stock and it's just going to look weird. So I would recommend, if you're buying from a seller, to ask them specifically whether or not it's a straight cut or a slant cut. Even ask for pictures, and in case they don't know what you mean by that, just ask them to take off the stock. That way you can take a look underneath. That way you know what you're in for, because obviously you don't want a slant cut in your rifle. That's just extra work for you and it's just less desirable. So you can probably negotiate on price a little bit if you do find one that's slant cut, but I would recommend trying to find one that is just a standard straight cut. That way you can easily swap out the stock without fitting. A typical AKM style stock is not going to perfectly fit in a MAK-90 rifle. It's going to need a bit of fitment to fit in there properly. So when you're buying the replacement parts, it's best to go with a Chinese stock. That way it fits right in there. It's going to fit perfectly as long as it's a Chinese stock. And when you're shopping for adapters or anything like that, make sure that it's a Chinese style, or else that's even going to need some fitment. It's going to be a little bit too wide to go into the receiver easily. Taking a look at a side-by-side comparison of a MAK-90 and a Tula AKM kit, you can see that there are a little bit of differences. The rivets in the back are the same. The support rivet in the center is in the same spot pretty much. But once you get to the trunnion, you can see that the rivets are a little bit displaced. The MAK-90 has the front rivet about in the middle of the receiver, while your typical AKM is going to have the front rivet right in front of the one behind it. Also, the trunnion style is a little bit different. You can kind of tell just looking back and forth. There's small differences in these rifles. The biggest difference is going to be with the front side block and the gas block. As you can see, the MAK-90's gas block has a sling loop that goes right through it, and the front sight is hooded, and the front sight block's a little bit wider than a standard AKM style. Just something to take note of. It might help you identify a MAK-90 over a standard AKM. So that's basically all I wanted to talk about. Just wanted to give a little overview of the rifle and its differences with other AKMs and things that you should look out for. They're fine rifles. Talking price, you're usually going to find the stamped versions for about $1,000 to $1,400. The milled versions are going to be a little bit higher in price, obviously. So anyways, thanks for watching and happy shooting.